Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Abez Show. Today, we have a very special guest. We have Mohamad Sabouneh. Mohamad and I work together currently at Rainmaking Venture Studio, and we met each other. Actually, we started working together 2 years ago, but I think we met you 3 years ago. You were this geeky kid with a laptop in an event trying to fundraise for your company. And we sat on, I remember I sat with another colleague of mine on the desk and I said, "Ah, I like this geeky fellow. He's very smart." And then our paths crossed, ironically, a couple of months after. So, hi,
Yep.
Mohammed, how are you?
Good. Kifa Gabe. All good.
Yes. And so tell the people who is Mohamad Sabouneh and tell them what did you do and what are you, well, we already know what you're doing now, but,
Yeah.
how did you get here?
Following what you said just now, we met at the Endeavor thing in Amman. I think that was in 2018. Yeah. Definitely the backpack what again. It was I took it everywhere with me. The laptop. Um, how did I get here? I've been working with startup for 7 years almost. Hello. And the way it started is actually post my MBA. I'm a mechanical engineer, completely different field. I didn't like doing work in it. I worked with a company. They threw me in the desert for a couple of years. So I decided, no, fuck this shit. I'm not doing that. So I did an MBA. I switched completely, to work with a venture capital firm for a couple of years. And then I got the entrepreneurial bug. I decided to start Moodfit, which was back then was the first online interior design and furniture platform in the MENA. So we launched that. To date we raised almost $1 million for it. That I did that for a couple of years with two of my co-founders, Tariq and Ghassan, up until the end of 2019, where things started to go south back in Lebanon. So I decided it's time for me to move, and then I joined Startup Bootcamp, and that's how we started working together in a way.
Yeah, no. So I personally know the story, but
Mm,
and I
yeah,
know that you had your, diverse experience in both. I remember. So for the audience, everybody who's ever worked for me in any company knows that we usually do something called a picha kucha, where
yeah.
we had people, summarize their lives in 5 minutes and 20 slides without them writing about it. And I always remember the pictures of you in the desert. I think in Libya, right? If I'm not mistaken.
In Algeria.
Algeria,
Algeria.
Algeria.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
just explain to me like what really triggered the "this is not for me" moment. I want to know more about, the second you was it the second you got there? Was it halfway through? Like what happened there?
I got into mechanical engineering because that's the Lebanese and imagine Jordanian, Middle Eastern guys. We're good at math, we're good at physics. What are you gonna do? You're gonna go into engineering because we didn't really have a lot of career orientation proper. But I liked working with cars. I still like cars to date. So I thought if I go into mechanical engineering, that I'm gonna end up working in cars, designing the engines, the kind of things. Obviously, that didn't work. I mean, I'd end up working on oil and gas. So already from the moment I graduated, I thought, okay, this is something that I like in theory, but coming in as a fresh grad working in oil and gas, I went into Algeria directly. I remember, and the desert is nice. I mean, as an experience, just living in the middle of nowhere, 400 kilometers from the closest city, it was a nice experience at the beginning, but I realized after a couple of months that this is not something I want to keep doing for the rest of my life. I mean, it didn't excite me. There was nothing that made me okay. I'm gonna go out every day and then solve something or do something different. And I decided after 2 years, I'm gonna give it a shot. I'm gonna go back to the office, try the engineering life in the office, see if it's any different. That didn't pay. That didn't work out. That failed miserably. Actually, I stayed for 7 or 8 months. Also didn't work out, and decided to do the MBA. I saw the MBA as a way to really just shift around my direction, just restart from scratch in a way, and then either I go back to something more exciting in engineering, or I was lucky enough to have a very good advisor back then, a mentor, one of my professors who told me go into venture capital. So I did my thesis on venture capital, and this is what really set me on this path. And I like it. And I like it so far till now. I mean, dealing with all these ideas, these startups, it's something I look forward to on a daily basis. And
That's amazing, especially that there's, you had the whole transition of you saying, questioning yourself, saying, this is not really for me. But then, and then, you decided to take one step that led into another, that led into a person who, 4 years down the road right now, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
You still remember that pivotal moment when that person told you, you know what? Maybe this is something that you should do with either venture capital or something. And, I've personally had some of these, even working in my job saying, I don't see you there. Maybe you should do that. You know what I mean? And that's something that is very, very, I think, big part of decision making and a big part of, where you are right now. Let's talk about your last year of experience. I know you went through literally every phase of the accelerator life. You've worked with, you worked as an entrepreneur in residence, and then you were the head of operations, and then you ran a program. You were the managing director of a program. Tell me, like, more about that last year. What did you learn? What would you like to learn that you thought that was missing out of there?
I did the VC side, so I'm gonna start from that, because for me there's three perspectives to this ecosystem, if you want to call it. Sure. So there's the investor side. That's where I started. I mean, and that's what I learned, everything related to the deal structuring, the investors, the this kind of things. But it was very observational in a way, because we didn't really get involved a lot in the day-to-day things. We didn't understand so we, back then, at least for myself, I'm saying that very candidly, we had a lot of concepts in our head. I mean, we need to look at this and this and this, but I personally didn't really understand what was the value behind it. Why do I need to do that? Why does it matter? What's friction in a startup? What's friction in a market? What does it take to really solve a problem? All of these things, just like we use them very lightly, because I was never really in the shoes where I had to build something. But the advantage I got is the access to the investors, the network, understanding a term sheet, all the legal aspect of the fundraising. So that helped a lot later. This lack of understanding of the fundamentals, this is what led me to jump ship back then, and then decide I want to start Moodfit. Actually building the concept, designing it with my co-founders, and running the day-to-day operations, and then actually getting funds to run it, it was a completely different experience. I mean, life-changing in a way, and then career-changing. But if I had to just summarize my two biggest lessons, I would say number one is actually getting stuff done, getting your hands dirty and shit, and on day-to-day basis, and actually closing tasks. There's something that I always struggle. I used to procrastinate a lot. I still do sometimes, and don't tell my boss. So working in a startup, not relying on someone else or having a very rigid structure or structure to hide these things, just taught me to actually get stuff done. So and things of way to do it. And the second thing I guess is letting go of ego in a team, especially as a founder. Dealing with other people. You're smiling. I see that. You get beaten so much that at the end of the day, okay, fine, I'm fine with that. You can. I don't take things personally anymore, most of the times. And where I learned to let go of ego when discussing with other people, especially co-founders. So I learned to value the other perspective, the other side, the approaches, and not get stuck on my own personal side of things. So these are the two things that I guess I learned a lot repeatedly, the hard way.
I think that even in Arabic we have something called tough skin. In Arabic we say tamsah, right? So tough. So I think something that is very, very important, which is if you don't have the skin and the ability to accept criticism or people criticizing your product, or if you don't have the stomach for it, then honestly, entrepreneurship is not for you. It's something that is, I have to say, it was very humbling because, and then also seeing things in people's eyes, how people perceive certain things. Because I'm sure, your startup, or your company Moodfit, you thought that the second you're going to open it, that you're going to fix a million problems in a month, right? And then
Mm.
turns out to be that Moodfit's the one that has a million problems that needs to be fixed. And yes, uh, to be a self-starter is something that is very important, and this is something that, I know you're good at it because I work with you. But looking at the mountain of tasks, especially in the beginning, the startup in the beginning has,
So much stuff to do.
yeah, exactly. There's, you said you had two co-founders. Well, the two co-founders were, the marketing, the freaking cleaning, the everything of the company, right? So,
Yeah.
uh, I remember once we were fundraising for a company myself, and we had a water leak in the kitchen, I think I remember, and we were like, me and the co-founder, we came out like our suit was essentially wet because we were trying to fix the drain. A, because we didn't have that much money to pay for a plumber, and B, said I can fix it. You know what I mean? We had to be
Yeah.
that kind of mentality, and that and that's something that you mentioned very well. And I'm gonna ask you though on that question. So what changed when you moved over to the accelerator side from that whole, because VCs, they kind of have a lot of the theory saying, oh, if the company doesn't do X amount, if the companies doesn't do um, doesn't have this much money, this much customers or this much employees. You know what I mean? Like they try to put people in boxes, and
What changed? I think the combination between the VC side and the startup side grounded me when dealing with other startups. If made me more practical, and I mean, in our line of work, you hear a lot of bullshit. Let's say it as it is. There's a lot of there's a lot of pictures. There's a lot of numbers. There's a lot of misconception. Sometimes founders or startups, and I made that mistake plenty of times, they pitch stuff and believe that they have something that is worth it, but eventually when they go and to the market or to investors, they hit that the first slap. I mean, when dealing with startups through the accelerator, I can see that, and the funny is that you see some founders taking that feedback, and sometimes they're just too in or too convinced of themselves or with their story that you can't do anything for them.
No, I agree. No, I agree. And you know what? I don't know. Like I love most of our startups. I'm not gonna say all of them, but most of them. But there is that look in people's eye in like week number 3 or 4, where they say, "What have I gotten into?" That
Mm.
whole, like, they thought they had a unicorn, and then they barely have anything on them, right? So they know that they need to roll up their sleeves and actually do the work. Uh,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And they think, the second they join a program, whatever, yes, we will give them a tons of access to a lot of mentors and investors, but it's not just because, like, Startup Bootcamp was a step further to validating their problem, but it's not the reason why this will be a unicorn. And people a lot of times often get that confused. They say, "Khalas, once we're in when start a boot camp, it's gonna rain. It's gonna rain money." And I'm like, no.
100%. 100%. I remember I had, even when in the beginning of the fintech program, you told me don't stress too much on the fundraising aspect. And back then, to be honest, I understood it 50%, but throughout the program, I completely see your point now. We, in no way, we can guarantee to anyone that you're going to fundraise. Going into an accelerator, regardless of who they are, is it Startup Bootcamp or any other, there's no guarantee that you're going to raise money. What's going to raise money in every case is that you go out there, get some validation, get some numbers, and then go back. And what we do is just open doors. the relationship between startup and investors or corporate partners or any of that is up to the startup completely.
They need to choose which door they need to walk in, right? So, and something that I see a lot is exactly what you said. People think money is the major problem, but I'm telling you, and you know this, when we look for an investment, or when I look for an investment, is we're looking for people, and we're looking for people who you just explained 10 minutes ago, saying, people who are willing to learn, people who wanted to get their hands dirty, people who are can take criticism, because a lot of people cannot do that. They're married, like, and I told you, we never take passion projects. We never say, because this person had a passion in fixing this. We never look into that, and that's something that is very threatening, in my opinion, and we need to look into that. So tell me right now, for you, Muhammad, what is your BHAG as Mohamad Sabouneh?
I mean, I could tell you I want to build a unicorn, but I mean, I gave up on that, I guess, in a way. I'm more practical in a way in my goals at this point. I like solving challenges, so working with startups is enough. But I mean, that's not a goal if you want to qualify it as a goal. I mean, I don't see myself working all the time from one perspective. So in the future, I might jump back to VC. I might start my own startup again. So I'm looking for my next exit, I guess.
Okay.
I mean, yeah.
Which makes sense. You are working in a venture builder, so we keep popping factories, and a part of me, and it's something I think we've discussed before as well, is I'm a big believer in this new zebra concept, where it's the startups are very collaborative, so that means they work with a lot of companies. It's not a big exit. It's every 3 to 4 years. You sell. What people don't know is even acquisitions and mergers happen around the $25 million range, which is still a lot of money for founders.
Yeah.
And I think like 98% of the world's transactions happen around that number anyway. And somebody once gave me a crazy number. Like in the Middle East alone, there's over 20,000 startups, and
20,000.
Yeah. You know what I mean? And we've only had 2 unicorns. Okay. So that's essentially 1 in 10,000. So
odds are crazy low. I mean, even if you want it as an objective, I mean, there's so many things working against you. There's so many things out of your control that the odds of that happening are just ridiculously low.
100%. And some things, like I can tell you, even the smartest, most resilient founders, nobody ever expected COVID-19. Nobody expected 2020 to be what it is. I think that took people out of so many comfort zones that people are really, really like people that really did well really went out of the box, while other people said, let's see how we can survive this. Let's see how we can grind this. So this is something that was very important in my opinion. Okay, so going back to your BHAG, I can tell you one of my BHAGs is to get an acquisition in 18 months. And that's why one of the reasons why I want to do what I'm doing right now in venture building is because I want to see how fast we can build and sell a company. That is actually a BHAG. So, so yours could be like, again, I'm not giving it to you, but I'm saying like, I want to sell 5 companies in the next 15 years or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, because that is a very attainable BHAG for you, by the way, FYI. So
2 things. I'm guessing exiting at 50, exiting at 50 million, exiting company at 50 million, in the next 5 years, I would say.
Okay.
And then that could be it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have other ideas, but I mean, if that would be the main one, I guess. If we're talking from the entrepreneurial side, if we're talking from the investor side, I would say I wanna give it a try to actually raise a fund for early stage companies. So thinking like a 20 million fund or 25 million fund to invest in early stage seed and pre-seed companies. Also, I would say these two goals in the next 5 years.
Nice.
One of them. Yeah.
Nice. All right. So, I'm going to ask you my curveball question that I ask everybody.
Okay.
And then
I'm ready.
Get ready for this. So, what superpower would you have, or what superhero would you mimic if you had the chance?
Time travel.
Really? Why would you be a time traveler?
I would go forward in time.
Okay.
If I had to be more specific, it would be time travel to the future. I don't care about the past. There's so many exciting things in the future. I would just want to look around.
Okay, let me ask you a bit more about that. So what is the future that you want to look for? Okay, because a lot of people, when they said, and I'm not gonna lie to you, a lot of people on the show said time travel. I think 3 other people, but everybody went back to correct something in their life. You are the only one who wants to go future. So tell me what's the reason behind that?
Whatever I did, it's done. I mean, it's whatever made me today who I am. I'm fine with my mistakes. I'm fine with the stuff I did right. The reason I want to go forward is I want to see where we're heading in a way. I want to see I want to travel through space. I want to see the new technologies. I want to see
we as in mankind, or as Mohamad Sabouneh?
Both. I'm not gonna have it all. Imagine if I travel to the future, I'm not gonna have it all in building that future, which is fine with me. But I want to take that leap forward, like 200 years, 300 years in the future. See where we become as a race. Are we gonna go to another planet? Or are we gonna? I love science. I love science fiction, so I want to see what we're gonna do with all of this. I mean, we're seeing all of these SpaceX. Galactic. Will we destroy ourselves as a race, or are we gonna actually explore the space, explore the universe?
And interesting you say that, because I know you've been talking about we've been talking about startups and stuff like that, and there's 3 major big monster startups or actually companies that are pioneering the space technology, which is Virgin Galactica, SpaceX, and Blue Origin, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And these are all 3 companies. And I think space is a big, it's the next frontier, literally, we're going to go all Turkey on everybody, but it is, it is the next big frontier. And I am kind of very excited, especially when you look at some of these space programs where they say we're going to start colonizing Mars in 2030 and 2035. 2035 is right across the, I know it's 10-15 years from now, but it's still right around the corner, right? You know what I mean? That's a lot closer than when I was a younger gentleman, you know what I'm saying? So I admire that, and I think that's a super cool superpower. And I didn't I thought you'd say more of a taskmaster superpower, knowing you, because you're very good at building tasks and finalizing tasks quickly. But anyway, would you like to put any final words to tell our audience something, maybe something about your journey, or summarize what you'd like to tell people?
I like to get comfortable with the idea of risk. So I encourage people just to, if there's something they like, if they feel uncomfortable with something, career-wise, life-wise, country-wise, anything, just take the step. Eventually, everything will be fine. I guess that's take the risk.
Yeah. Nice. Well, you are very wise, my friend. And
it's the years. It's the years. It's the white hairs.
The white hairs, yes. I know all about them. So, well, thank you very much, Mohamad. Thank you, audience, for listening. Enjoy until next time we meet. Take care.
You too. See you. Bye.